It's Career Friday here on Cheddar News, when we share our top tips and advice for job seekers. And the latest jobs data does show that the unemployment rate rose to 3.7% in May, and the number of unemployed persons rose by 440,000 to 6.1 million. Well, these numbers might be worrisome for job seekers in today's market, especially those who've been on the hunt for some time or recently laid off. So I do want to bring in an expert to help us ease our minds, give us the facts that we need to know, because I certainly see optimism out there. Joining me now is Elizabeth Pearson, executive career coach and author of Career Confinement. To get us the do's and don'ts for interviewing. Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining the show. What do our viewers need to know?
Oh my gosh, Kristen, so much. And I want to start out by saying, too, you said, like, maybe it's not the right time to look. Is it the right time? I just want to start this segment off by saying you should always be looking. It's like always be closing. You should always be looking. You never know what amazing opportunities are out there. And you don't want to get in a place where you feel like your back's up against the wall. If maybe you hear that your company in the next 2 weeks is going to start downsizing or there's going to be a reorg. So I think be prepared at all times.
Okay, good news. I like that. It gives you more leverage as well. The number one don't for interviews, what do people need to know if they make it to that step of an interview?
Yeah, I think, well, this can come a little later, but I do think you should not disclose your current salary. When I talk to clients, a lot of times they feel a little stressed, a little bullied into giving what they were previously making or currently making at their employer. And I try to explain to them that it's completely irrelevant. It's like somebody asking you what you paid for your home because that's what they're going to use to base what they should be paying for it. It doesn't matter. It's what the home's value is right now. Maybe there were some renovations, and for you, right, maybe you have some increased experience. Obviously you do. So I just always tell them, don't start negotiating against yourself. And that's what you're doing when you disclose what your salary range is. And if they really push and say, you know, I don't want to waste your time, I really need to know what your band is. You can say, you know, you're the one who can best assess my skills aligned with this job requirement and the value that it could bring to your organization. So always push it back on them to tell you what the range is and how much they think that, you know, you're a fit and therefore you should be at the top of the range.
Okay, I think that that's really good advice, and I've received that advice too. Wait for the offer to be on the table before you come back and try to negotiate. So thank you, Elizabeth. Okay, job seekers, if they feel ghosted by an employer, I'm reading here that is happening at times. They might be interested in a job, but they're not hearing back from the company that they're interested in. What does that mean, and what should they do?
It's so rude, right? I mean, I feel so terrible. There's all of these candidates who get really excited about a job. They think they totally crushed the interview. They showed up on time. They dressed up. They did their research on the organization and the person who they were interviewing. And then maybe the interviewer, like, kind of shows up late. Like, this is a pet peeve of mine too. Like, I think you should be on time. And I think that if you aren't, you should let the candidate know that you're going to be running late. And I think you should come with the same enthusiasm that the candidate has for the conversation, and you can show them that. And by all means, if they're not a fit, please let them know. Because if not, people are very vocal too. If they have a bad experience interviewing with your company, they will take to Glassdoor and talk about it. Like, they will post on it that you were very dismissive or things like that. So I say, just have common courtesy. And if you're the interviewee too, and you're not interested and you're just trying to buy time and like try to get offers pitted against each other, I always say, don't do that. Just make a decision and go with it and just be really transparent.
Okay, so Elizabeth, skills, perhaps new skills. What are the skills in demand right now? Or is it worth, if you are interested in switching jobs, or maybe you're one of the people who have been laid off of late? Of course, there have been a good amount of layoffs that we've seen this year. How do those skills matter, and should people think about upskilling?
Yeah, I think people should always be trying to better themselves and do any kind of like gap filling that's possible in their resume. So maybe you're in an industry that doesn't feel like a fit anymore and you do want to make a pivot. What I always say is really go back through your resume right now and highlight experience and skills that you have, and then try to bridge that gap for the employer. And this is something that you can actually do in the cover letter. You can look at the job description and pick out like 3 things that they say that they want the candidate to have, and then literally connect the dots for them on what they need and what you've done. And the beauty is that now I think a lot of people are willing to talk with candidates that don't necessarily have that linear career path. Maybe they came from a different industry, and that's something that this employer wants because it brings a fresh perspective. So I think that you can always connect the dots, but if it is something specific, take an online course, or, look into like a networking group where you can develop that skill that you feel like might be missing.
So here's another question that I have, Elizabeth. In an environment where you might feel helpless, right? The economy is slowing, the number of available jobs might be slowing, and maybe you even just kind of feel stuck in your current position, like there's not a lot of room for growth. I think sometimes people, understandably so, can get discouraged and just kind of allow the status quo to continue. What would you tell them in terms of the possibilities that do exist, perhaps even in times that are slow or times when they feel like they're doing stuff but not necessarily able to get anywhere in their current role?
For sure. It's so hard. It can be so, you know, hard on your morale. It can really take, an erosion to your confidence every time you feel like you're going after something and maybe you aren't getting what you want, or maybe you get your hopes up about a job and then, you're ghosted or something happens that it doesn't work out. First off, I say keep your head up. There are a lot of other people in your exact same position right now, and that might not seem comforting at first. But I think that if we reach out to our network and try to support each other, so even if you're the one that's seeking a job, instead of reaching out and saying, what can you do for me? Check in with your network and say, is there anything I can do for you? Maybe the organization that you worked with isn't a fit for you anymore, but maybe somebody else wants an introduction. And I always say too, like, you got to keep your vibe high. And it feels counterproductive to take time to bring joy into your life when you're in such a stressful transition point. But I think if you have good energy and you just keep reminding yourself that you are not unemployable, somebody will recognize that value. And I think all we have to do is really be patient. We have to let the universe bring us opportunities while we're actively looking and taking action, and really keep the faith. Because I think once you lose faith is when you can really feel like it's going to be an insurmountable mountain that you're not going to be able to get up. So I always say, like, get a support network. This is a hard time, but you will make it through.
All right, Elizabeth Pearson, executive career coach and author of Career Confinement. Thank you so much for joining today, and we appreciate the insight.